Before I go into my presentation, I'd like to welcome everybody to beautiful Southern California. Those who are from the East Coast, I hear you're going to be staying a couple extra days. There's a little bit of snow coming that way. And I sympathize with you because I used to live in Philadelphia, and one of my daughters lives in Washington, D.C., but I'm very glad that I'm in Southern California. I have on the screen a small video clip that I just want you to pay attention to, right? Rx-360 is not even 5 years old yet, and we have over 80 member organizations that belong, and of course, the army of people who volunteer to make Rx-360 successful. So there's about 400 people now who are volunteering at Rx-360. They work for companies like Amgen, and those are on the screen. If your company's not listed on the screen, I know a few of you are in the audience today, should really think about joining Rx-360 because the value of it is we get to collaborate, we get to work together, not just amongst ourselves, but with regulators, policymakers, legislatures around the world, because the problems we're trying to deal with are too complex, too big for any one government agency, or even any one company to try to address. And I know that's hard for us in the pharmaceutical industry to collaborate because everything's so secret and what we do is special, right? But in this case, in this space, what we do is not that special. How we do it's not that special. And we got to take the advantage away from the criminal element that's out there that's threatening the patients that we're here to serve. So I just want to congratulate the companies that are on the screen behind me and thank them for being members of Rx-360. And I want to encourage those who aren't to really think about joining, right? It's really important. I'll go through my slide deck a little bit, but I just wanted to give that little passion plea before I start and a little credit to those who are involved. So clearly I want to talk a little bit about the problem, and address the problem, what Rx-360 is and how we're organized, some accomplishments, and then some of our goals and objectives. And then I'll turn it back over to the rest of the day. Hopefully I can be brief. So the problem is, we all watch the news and read the newspapers, but, you had tainted cough syrup, right? It was contaminated glycerin. And I don't even want to say contaminated, right? Adulterated glycerin. It wasn't even glycerin. It was antifreeze, right? And then you had the heparin event. And the heparin event is really the call to action that allowed Rx-360 to form. So after the heparin event, right, the US FDA decided they should have a workshop with the PDA on supply chain and the security of the supply chain. And I was asked to come and talk at that conference. And the more I did research into what happened with heparin, it became very clear to me very quickly this was not a failure of GMPs, right? This was not a benign act of not following the rules or cutting the corners. These were criminals who were intentionally substituting something that looked like heparin, tested like heparin, but when he put it into the body, caused tragic consequences. And when I started thinking about the criminals, I started thinking about my personal life. And I'm like, said to myself, I said, I have a lock and a security system at my house. And I thought about it, and that doesn't keep the criminals out of my house. That keeps the honest people honest, right? And that's what GMPs do. They keep the honest people honest, right? If you're going to be a criminal or you're going to be unethical, GMPs don't mean anything to you, right? And the tragedy of the heparin, this gentleman here was testifying in front of the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate, and you need to watch this video sometime. So when he went to testify, he talked about how his wife, her condition required her to be on heparin, and that she died from the adulterated heparin. So that's pretty tragic in itself. He then goes on to proceed in his testimony to say 2 months later, his son had the same medical condition as his wife did and was being treated with heparin. And he also died from the adulterated heparin. And at the time, they didn't know what was going on, so he didn't stop taking his medicine. So clearly, we have a privilege, right? And our privilege is to serve patients. And that privilege comes with real big responsibilities. And one of those responsibilities is to have a secure, reliable, and robust supply chain. And so hopefully Rx-360 could help everybody in the room make sure that their supply chain is secure, reliable, and robust, and to try to stay one step ahead of those unethical players. But the stories continue, right? Melamine in pet food. We had melamine in infant formula, right? Cargo theft around the world is out of control, right? It's even becoming armed robbery in parts of Europe, Southern Europe, and in Latin America. You know, China had a recall infant formula for melamine. You had more contaminated heparin in Nigeria, teething gel, counterfeit Avastin. Now, the Avastin case is interesting. Has everyone heard about the counterfeit Avastin in the room? No? So I'll describe it a little bit. So in the United States, we have a very closed, secure distribution of medicine to the end patient through the pharmacy and wholesaler system. But the internet puts holes in that system. So physicians got deals that were too good to be true for Avastin, a chemotherapy treatment used to treat patients with breast cancer. Probably a $400 a vial savings, that's kind of what I've heard. And they started buying this Avastin online, and they thought they were buying Genentech's Avastin just at a cheaper price, but what they were buying was counterfeit medicine made in Syria that went through Turkey, that went to Switzerland through a worldwide broker, that went to Great Britain, that then went to the Caribbean and was bought through a Canadian internet pharmacy and wound up in the United States. And when this broke and we started to look at it, the FDA, and I give them credit, published the names of all the physicians that were buying from this internet pharmacy. Now, if any place in the world where you would think physicians would be attuned to biotechnology and the complexities of biotechnology and the risk of counterfeit and adulterated medicine, would be here in little sleepy Thousand Oaks, California, you know? Little suburbia, way away from LA. 4 oncologists, 4 in Thousand Oaks, were buying this counterfeit Avastin. 4. Treating probably people I know, my neighbors, people at Amgen. So clearly this is a big problem and we need to address it. The whole end-to-end supply chain. So why are criminals doing this? It's very profitable, right? You can take $1,000, a criminal can take $1,000, and if they then counterfeit a Rolex watch or a DVD or a Gucci purse, they make about $1,000 makes them about $10,000 in profit. If they deal in illicit drugs like marijuana and cocaine, that same $1,000 can generate about $100,000 in profit. But if you were to counterfeit pharmaceuticals, you can take that $1,000 and turn it into $1 million of profit. And unlike a drug deal that goes bad, an illicit drug deal, where people have guns and there's violent crime and very strict penalties, right, where you go to jail for long periods of time if you're a drug dealer, if you counterfeit pharmaceuticals around the world, the penalties are very, very light, very light. The average counterfeiter in the United States gets no more than an 18-month jail sentence. 18 months. Even if they had their acts cause the death of patients, 18 months. We've globalized our supply chains. It's no longer I make it myself, it's vertically integrated. We buy stuff all around the world, right? That complexity allows the criminal element to prosper. It provides them the opportunity to exploit. Same thing with global trade and the internet, right? The FDA has done studies that say 97% of the internet pharmacies that people buy prescriptions from in the United States, when they test those medicines, aren't real. So 97% of the testing that the FDA has done, that's been confirmed by independent studies. That's a pretty scary fact. People trying to save a couple bucks, you know, get the bad medicine. And we talked about the weak controls and penalties, right? So FDA asked industry to step up, and that was the foundation of Rx-360. Dr. Woodcock at that PDA conference I talked about earlier gave a call to action to industry. And myself with 4 other colleagues Some of them you might know from Pfizer, from GlaxoSmithKline, from AstraZeneca. We got together and we said, guys, we're lucky. How fortunate are we that this didn't happen to us, our company? Because it very easily could have. And Baxter was very unfortunate that it happened to them. And we decided the only way to solve this, or to stay ahead of it, because we don't think we can solve the problem, is to collaborate. And that's the foundation of Rx-360. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's not just raw materials. It's the entire supply chain. It's raw materials, not just the expensive ones. Glycerin, for those who don't know, a 55-gallon drum of glycerin, pharmaceutical grade, costs less than $50. And they're adulterating that, right? They're adulterating that, right? So it's excipients, it's APIs, it's components, it's drug product, it's packaging label, it's storage, distribution, it's everything. And even anti-counterfeiting technology has been counterfeited, right? So one of our colleagues at another company, his anti-counterfeiting technology, 6 months after they develop it, all the IP around it, and put it on all of their products, 6 months afterwards, someone in China figured out how to make it and started putting it on the counterfeit product, right? So you always have to be thinking ahead of the criminal. Our mission at Rx-360 is pretty simple. We serve patients, and we share information, and we develop processes that assure the integrity and the quality of the materials that run through our supply chain. Guy Vilaks, big supporter of Rx-360. He's the CEO of Hovion. He's our vice chair, will be the chair next year of Rx-360. Very big supporter. It's that European influence we want to bring into Rx-360. And we're trying to bring people together, right? And so clearly we share public information. When we hear of information, we share that with as large a community as we can, right? We bring people together to solve problems, right? We try to act as a clearinghouse for suspicious activity. So we've had calls, me personally have calls, from colleagues who don't know who to call or who to contact about suspicious activity. We try to make the connection, or if they're afraid to make that connection, we'll do that for them. We then share that information with our members, right? We figured that if we all going to go audit a supplier, and we all use the same supplier, why do we all have to go audit that supplier for the same raw materials? Can we work together and do it collectively, right? Saving the supplier resources, us spending more time at the supplier. So if I go to the supplier and say, look, I know you get 25 audits a year from my 25 of my best friends here. How about if we come do it once, right? Will you let us come in more than one day? Can we spend 3 days, 4 days with you? And we'll guarantee that we only do it once, not 25 times. And they allow us to do that. And so we get more information in a more efficient manner about the supplier. And the supplier benefits because they're not wasting resources tending to audits, are actually fixing the things we say need to be fixed, right? And we're working on technologies, right, to help us all get better. Our membership is global. We have small and large companies, right, both generic manufacturers, proprietary companies, suppliers, and suppliers. Regulatory agencies are observers and members to Rx-360. We're a very transparent organization. There's really no secrets here. We want everybody to know what we're doing. And we want to work collaboratively together. And a good example of where we collaborated was, everybody remembers the earthquake in Japan that led to a tsunami, that led to a meltdown of a nuclear power plant. And how many of you guys who are in this raw, supply chain world, quality, procurement, whatever, raise your hands? It was a nightmare for you, right? So we then at Rx-360 pulled a team of experts together. And those experts involve quality professionals, supply chain professionals, environmental health and safety professionals. We had someone from the nuclear Navy, the United States Nuclear Navy, on that task force, right? To understand the risk. How to, one, get medicine into Japan, right? So we can treat the patients in Japan. But number two, how do we know if the raw materials coming out of Japan are safe, right? And what do we need to do? And we were able to put together a points to consider, a risk assessment, things for our members to use to assess their supply chain. And while we were doing that, the FDA called and said, Martin, we need to meet. We need to meet like now. Can we meet with you today? And it was on this topic about Japan. I said, sure. We have a team working on it already. And so the FDA was going to publish a series of documents. And they heard what we were doing. They put someone on our team. And then we got those documents out much faster than the government could go through the government bureaucratic processes that are required by legislation to do. We're able to get that out working together faster in a more robust way to give guidance to people on how to protect patients. It's a simple operating model. It's a nonprofit organization. It's volunteer-based. So you saw the companies that were up there. We have about 400 volunteers, so members of our companies who spend their own personal time working at Rx-360 to do those collaborations and to write those documents and figure out how the best practices are. No individual person is a member of Rx-360. A company is. And as an employee of a company, you get all the benefits because your company is a member. And the most important thing is we're not here to replace the regulatory system. We're not here to replace the MHRA, the FDA. Right? We're here to work together to solve hard problems, right? Not to fight with each other, not to be opposed. So Rx-360 does not lobby. Unlike pharma, where pharma goes and they lobby, or IFPIA, they go lobby at the behest of the industry, which we need. We don't do that. We don't want to be viewed as a group that does lobbying, right? We want to be a group that comes up with the solutions, right? We have a lot of smart people who work for us. Can we use that to come up with the solutions? And it's been designed so that it's not in conflict with any antitrust or anti-competitive laws around the world. Here's a list of the members. I showed it on the video, but you can see it's a very healthy list of both manufacturers, suppliers, auditing firms, and associations. So there are three things that Rx-360 focuses on. One, auditing, supply chain security, and what I call competitive intelligence, external affairs and intelligence. So in the audit program, right, these slides are a little bit outdated, but we continue to do audits, right? We have over 100 audits in the database today. I think at some point in time, we'll probably have 1,000 to 10,000 audits collectively a year that will be in that database. So the system's moving forward. It's been refined. It's now a process of us as the pharmaceutical industry letting go a little bit and saying it's okay for me to do an audit with my colleague from Pfizer or Merck or Biogen IDEC. And it's okay for a supplier to say, I'm okay, I'll let Rx-360 come in. I trust that they're not going to hurt me. Good suppliers will do good in this system. Bad suppliers will get weeded out. And there's paradigms we have to break down to make this model work. I'm confident we'll do it. I'm just not confident it might not happen in my lifetime, but we'll do it, right? This not invented here proprietary mindset we have in our industry, we have to let go. I'm sorry, every argument that people will put forward why I can't do a shared audit, come throw it at me today and I'll tell you why it's an irrational argument, right? So one argument is, I don't know the qualifications of the auditor, okay? We all have auditing organizations. And if I took all my auditors in my auditing organization, I have a bell-shaped curve. I have really good ones, the average ones, and the ones on the other end. It's a bell-shaped curve. Even if you have all great auditors, they're on a bell-shaped curve. How hard is it for a company to get rid of lower-level performers through your HR and legal and bureaucracy? It's almost impossible, right? It's hard. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. Well, at Rx-360, you guys say, I don't like that auditor. We say he won't go in the audit. Done. We don't have to deal with that. They're not our employees, they're contractors. So the selection process for the best auditors, we can do much more effectively by collaborating and working together than we can do within a company, right? And you have better selection of talent, right? If you have a problem with a glass manufacturer, how many auditors in our companies are glass experts? but there are auditors in the outside world who are glass experts that do auditing. So we have a greater access to more talent. So I can throw, every argument that comes for me is an irrational argument, and I'd be glad to talk to anybody at the break or during Q&A about that. Supply chain security is a very active piece. Kind of started a little bit around cargo theft. Cargo theft in the United States started to get out of control. The most highly publicized theft of materials was a Lilly warehouse in Connecticut. Have everyone's heard that story? It's like social engineering at its best. So the way that story goes, bunch of criminals say, I need some medicine, I have orders, let's go find it. They went online, and you go into all the companies' websites. You can't do it anymore, but you used to go on, and you say about us, where you're located, and they tell you all the locations. Not just like I'm in Thousand Oaks, California, but we used to say I'm on Rancho Canal Road, here's 1 Amgen Drive Center, here's the picture of my facility, right? That's what we used to do. And everybody did this. So they went on the websites, and they found all these companies. I said, oh yeah, Lilly, we like that medicine. We have a market for that. Where is that warehouse? Oh, that warehouse is right next to I-95, a big corridor on the East Coast. And then they pulled up Google Earth, put in the address they got from the Lilly website, and they gave a nice picture of the facility. And they were able to case the facility and say, it's an isolated facility back in the woods, it's a warehouse off of a small street. It's not fenced in, there's no guards. So that's the target. So they come there one night, and they wait. It's a stormy night. And they come there one night, and they drop a guy off who goes to the dock door. And it's real windy and stormy. And what's he do? He starts shaking the dock door. Of course, that sets off the alarm. He runs into the woods. He waits 5 minutes. The police come. Police do a perimeter search. Manager of the warehouse comes. Everything. And I said, it must be the wind blowing the dock door. They all leave. Guy comes back out of the woods. What's he do? He shakes the door again. Everyone comes back. He does this 3 times. And on the third time, the police say, look, if this happens one more time, I'm going to fine you for nuisance and wasting police resources. So what did the Lilly manager do? Turned the alarm off, right? We'd all do the same thing. Turned the alarm off, came out the 4th time, he shook the door, he knew what the response time was because he did it 3 times before. No one showed up. Called his buddies, they brought a semi-truck in, parked it on the dock. Of course, the dock was around back of the building, so you couldn't see it from the street. Climbed up on the roof of the truck, got onto the roof of the building, cut a big hole in the roof of the building, went down into the dock, opened up the dock door. Now, they filled $70 million of product was sold, $70 million. And, that's a lot of product. How do they get that on the truck? Well, they had to use forklifts. Whose forklifts did they use? They left the keys in the forklifts. You laugh about that. All your companies probably do the same thing. If you haven't listened to this speech, you go back tomorrow and you'll say, do you guys have the forklift keys at night? Right? They don't do that at Amgen anymore. And they drove away with $70 million of product down I-95. Right? Now, they've caught those guys eventually. A year later, they caught those guys, recovered some of the product. But it just goes to show you, it's a different game. When I started in this business 30 years ago, that stuff didn't happen. Right? It's a different game we're in now. And so we have a whole supply chain security team that talks about how do we prevent those things, how do we do risk assessments, what are the best practices that we as industry should implement, right, to prevent bad things from that happening to us, right? And the whole goal of security is to harden your defenses so they go after a weaker guy, right? So we're hardening our defenses at Amgen. If you're not hardening your defenses in your company, you'll be called into your CEO's office and asked why you had the keys in the forklift and why they were able to steal $70 million of your product. Not a thing I want to do. We do white papers, we do education, and we look for things where we can improve opportunities. We have an external affairs working group. How many people get Rx-360 flash reports? Okay, for the few people who don't, if you go to the Rx-360 website, rx360.org, rx-360.org, and you sign up on the website, you'll get flash reports. And we send flash reports out for a couple things. When a new regulation, new law, new guidance comes out, proposal or implementation, we summarize it. And we give you a PowerPoint slide deck within 7 days of that happening. So you have a summary so you can start thinking about how this affects your company. And we also then send out news threats and things that are happening in the industry. So just recently, a Chinese company bought one of the largest pork producers in the United States. And why is that important? Because pork is used to make heparin, and that's the beginning of the tragedy of the heparin story. So we send out those kind of information. Just a summary of the things that we've sent out and the things we do. We do alerts. So when we see something that's really critical, we send out an alert. And there hasn't been that many of them. There's about 18 alerts we've sent out. But for example, I was reading the newspaper one day, and I learned that helium will go away and be in short supply. And the reason is there's only so much helium on the Earth. It's not a natural occurring compound. It comes from asteroids that have hit the Earth thousands and thousands of millions of years ago. Because we fill up balloons and we subsidize it as a government, it's been overused and abused. But how many of you guys, analytical instruments, use helium? How many do you, right? Yeah, helium's going to get real expensive real fast. They're talking about the size of a little hot air balloon you use for a kid's Christmas party. That costs you like $6 today. They say that will cost $1,000 10 years from now. So you should be thinking about how to get rid of helium, because if you don't, some criminal's going to figure out how to substitute some other crazy thing for you, because they'll make a lot of profit. These are the things that criminals try to exploit, right? Unethical people look for opportunities so they can exploit them. We started an Asia working group, so anybody who has colleagues in Asia that want to get actively involved, we have an Asia working group. Janice Berman is the contact. And all these slides have been sent to all the participants, correct? You've got these already? Yep. And then you can look forward to our goals. But I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the goals, because clearly I wanted to give you the passion that we need to act. And more importantly, you need to stop thinking about what we do as special in this space, and that we need to work together to try to solve this problem. It's too big, it's too global, and it's too hard to solve without working together. Some additional working groups, membership, we're going to start a medical device group. So if your company's combination products, medical devices, we're going to try to address those issues along the same lines. And with that, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.